The Florida Podcast Network, the voice of Florida.
From Mallory Square in Key West to the Governor's Mansion in Tallahassee and all points beyond, you're listening to the Florida Beer Podcast, powered by FloridaBeerBlog.com, your source for all things related to the craft beer community in the Sunshine State. And now your host, Dave Butler.
Welcome. It is time for another episode of the Florida Beer Podcast, powered by FloridaBeerBlog.com and the Florida Podcast Network. This is Dave, your host and author. And before we get started on our couple of interviews today, I would like to make sure that you are following us on social media. We are on Instagram and Twitter at Florida Beer Blog. Facebook is FL Beer Blog, or you can obviously write us at floridabeerblog@gmail.com. But hopefully you're reading floridabeerblog.com anyways. We are a proud member of the Florida Podcast Network, and you can find us at floridapodcastnetwork.com, where you can find out all sorts of information about all the great shows on the Florida Podcast Network. I'm going to let you know that I have some exclusive information that I am very excited about. I cannot wait to reveal it on the show. I am not allowed to say anything, so I will give you a hint that the exciting news is about Florida. And now that I've given my poor producer a heart attack, let's get into today's episode. We actually have a couple of interviews today. The first one is with Ben Graybar. He is the founder and organizer of the Tallahassee Beer Festival, which is going to be going on August 28th. Recommend that you follow them, and hopefully you can or have tickets for this year's event, which is going to be bigger and better and housed at the Tallahassee Civic Center, which is where I graduated college, if I am correct. It's going to be an amazing event. I know our producer Steve is going to be going and doing some interviews for the podcast when he's there. But we're going to chat with Ben about the event, the history, growing it, and the amazing number of beneficiaries that are going to be benefiting from your ticket sales. So enjoy.
TLHbeerfest.com. You'll see some drone overhead pictures of what it looked like. And it wasn't excessively crowded. The goal is that you never have to wait more than a couple people in line to go get the next beer. But there was room to grow. And we had about 70 breweries last year, unique brands that were represented, including home brewers. We had about 9 of them last year. And so to make it more spacious and to allow for some growth, we rented the downstairs of the Civic Center. So normally it's just the exhibit hall, which is a pretty massive space. They have the home show down there. Mm-hmm. But we also rented the arena floor where they play basketball and things like that, and the hallway in between. So we've got better than a 50% increase in our overall capacity. So it should make for a nicely roomed out, spaced out event. And to help you find where you're going, first, we've added 30 minutes to the event from last year. And second, the Civic Center has indicated they're going to help us create a QR code so that you can map out and see, hey, I want to go check out where my specific brewery of interest or home brewer is. And you can go right to them based on that map that you can scan on your phone.
That's kind of amazing. And with the location, the Civic Center is associated with Florida State. And because you're going to be doing this in late August, there's a good possibility that school will be back in session. Do you expect there to be more college students, more Florida State students attending this event than you had in the previous years?
Yeah, that's a great question. I get social media statistics from the Instagram, Facebook, and ads specifically on age and gender of who's seeing our posts. But what's unique about this year is, for people that are familiar with college kids in FSU, they tend to not wander far from campus. This is the first time that with the Civic Center being right on the edge of College Town, we'll be in walking distance to where so many of them are hanging out. And college classes at FSU, at least, I'm not certain about FAMU's schedule, start again August 13th. So you'll have students that get there the beginning of August. Our event is the end of August. So I'm expecting to see a pretty quick ramp up when the word gets out, college kids are back, and hey, there's a beer festival and we can walk to it.
Excellent. And with the breweries themselves, how many do you have coming in? And are we going to continue to see more breweries show up the closer we get to the event?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's always a moving target, and it's a bit, disconcerting as an event organizer to be selling tickets to an event when you don't have the answer to who all's going to be there. But here's the way it works. We've got the North Florida Homebrewers League that is going to be there in pretty full force. We've got almost a dozen of those guys. And then I've connected on social media with some of the Central Florida homebrewers. And so just yesterday, we added somebody from Tampa that said, can I still come up to this event? So they're still considering it and talking about it. And I was on the phone yesterday with Sunshine State Distributing, who in Tallahassee works with Ology, and they have a number of brewers outside of town. And the conversation was really, in the beer community, there's two kinds of people that say, beer, sure, I'll have one. And people that say, well, what type of beer and who's the brewery and what's their distribution? And like me, quite frankly, beer snobs, I have a specific opinion and palate on what I want, and I'm going to be purposeful about it. And a lot of the guys in the brewing industry, they differentiate between a craft beer festival and a beer festival. Mm-hmm. Well, we're a little bit of, as a nonprofit benefiting event, we're meant to be all of this to everybody, because there's a whole lot of people who will come in and try, a brand that everybody you'd think has tried. Maybe a Guinness will be there, but there are some people that haven't tried that yet. And I'd say maybe 60% of the people will try the core brands, I would say, from the breweries, that they have it all, all day and every day and all year. But most of them bring at least one unicorn. And then, of course, VIP, which is already sold out. That's where we have to buy those beers that we can't get donated, because they tend to be in such short supply. They don't need to market them. And so the people that do have a really defined palate on this stuff, they'll make a point of getting into that. So, and back to answer the question on the college kids piece, traditionally we've had maybe 10 or 15% college kids. I'm guessing that if we have tickets still available to purchase, and half of our tickets as of today are sold, and we started selling May 21st. So we're way ahead of where we've ever been with any of these sales. We sold VIP out in 1 week. We've sold a total of 1,000 tickets out in 2 weeks. And here we are now with still almost 90 days to go until the event. But I'm thinking any amount of tickets that we have going into August is going to become the definition of how many college kids we really have there, which could be a spike up to as much as maybe 30, 40%, which would still be a lot higher than we have been. But for the most part, I believe most of the tickets we've sold already are to people that on social media are tracking between 35 and 50 years of age on average.
Awesome. Now, one of the things that I enjoy about a solid brew fest, and it kind of sounds like this is the case, is for the people that, like us, that are snobs and want to go in and talk about the beers and talk to the reps and be able to not only understand what they're drinking, but the why and the how and everything. Do the breweries that go there, do they usually have people that are knowledgeable about that and that are willing and able and interested in chatting with event goers, not only about the beer, but the brewery and sort of the philosophies and work behind the beers that they're bringing?
It's really interesting how different the approach is between the distributors and the independent brewers. So many people want to do it themselves. They want to talk, they want to hand it out, and we have a picture on our website page of Marshall Lapete from Greater Depths Distributing and Deep Brewing, and I watched her go full speed back and forth and back and forth. And they didn't ask for any volunteers, and they wanted to do it, and they were sort of talking as they were working. I've seen Tri come with printouts with descriptions of every single beer laminated and put out on the table so that people can look at it and read it. I heard one of the brewery reps say, yes, I'm rehearsing what I know that I'm going to be repeating 100 times over during the event, which is the description of the beer that I've got there. And we offer, because we've got 28 nonprofits that are benefiting from the net proceeds of this event. Well, we offer volunteers on our brewery sign-up document. We've got a formal document saying, here's what we give you, here's what we're asking of you. And do you want volunteers? And that way the volunteers can be busy with doing the pouring so that the reps, if they want to, can have the opportunity to stand and talk more. So everybody has a different approach, and we're there just to try to make it a win-win-win and be as accommodating as possible, because we want this to be really a community event for Tallahassee for sure. We've got Visit Tallahassee as one of our sponsors, and the Downtown Business Association, because there's a lot of people that are either going to have lunch or dinner before or after or both of our event. It is certainly a fundraising event for our local nonprofits. Last year it was around $36,000. We're hoping to get to $50,000 made for them this year. But remember, all the beer in the general admission space is donated beer by these brewers and breweries. And the purpose of doing that, this is their marketing dollars. This is their chance when you walk into the beer store or the supermarket and you see 600 kinds of beer and you're like, do I want to take a chance on a $15 4-pack of going, oh, that's not what I had in mind? Or do I want to take my cell phone and sample these things and snap a picture of it? And when I go, I know that these are the 3 or 4 kinds I'm looking for it, so I can try what I know I like. And that's really the benefit of them participating.
And have the breweries that have gone found a good bump to their visitation after the event? I've spoken to a lot of breweries, and there are some beer festivals that they won't go to because they, in essence, and I'm using air quotes here, call it a drunk fest, where people just want to go consume and nobody bothers to show up afterward.
Yeah,
I would assume that yours is the opposite.
That's a great question. I have not received specific feedback from the distributors, and that's an unfortunate thing. But for the local breweries who I get to see, just because I get to see them here in town, to know that there are people that said, I never even knew what kind of beer you had because I live on the other part of town. Now that I've had a chance to sample you, I make a point of driving over there. I can tell you from my personal experience, I bought some nice, expensive New England IPAs, double hazies that I wouldn't have taken a chance on, because every now and then you get a flavor that's outside of what you like, that I got to sample, and I don't get to sample all that much at the beer festival. So I know that it works to some degree for sure. More importantly, though, if you're a distributor that's not participating, and again, I walk in and I see, here's the stout section, and I want a coffee stout, and there's a wide variety of how those things go, and those tend to not be on the cheap end of the scale. And I know that I've had these 3 that I like a lot, and I haven't tried that other one yet. Do I want to part with my money to take a shot and be disappointed? And I think a lot of people, especially like us, who might be more preferential on where we're selecting, are going to say, no, I want to try what I know I like. I don't want to waste my time or money otherwise.
Gotcha. Speaking of money, you mentioned a few times that you have a whopping 28 different beneficiaries for the event. And I know obviously nobody's getting paid. You aren't even getting paid because you're just doing this as a volunteer. All of the money is going to those beneficiaries. How is that done? Are they just going to be receiving 1/28 of the monies collected, or how is that going to work?
Yeah, that's a great question. So there are over 130 members of the United Partners for Human Services, which is in essence like an association, a support agency for the member nonprofits. I'm a former board member there, and I run this event for them. There is the name on the license, and that's why we can run this with donated product. And so of those 100 and something members, 28 of them have said we would like to participate in receiving net proceeds from this event. And the way that they do that is we assign a unique ticketing code to them, and then we charge them with going out and becoming our extended marketing arm, maybe reaching people that normally wouldn't be tuned in to what's going on with the beer festival. And if they do a good job of that outreach, and someone calls up and to buy a ticket or logs in online, and it has right there on the online thing, if there's a nonprofit code, enter it here. If they've done a good job of marketing to urge you to make that ticket purchase, then you put in the code for whatever the nonprofit is that you want to be supportive of. So it's not that you just show up and say, okay, here's the list of people, I like this one. No, they have to market to you and tell you that code so that you can enter that code. Now, the way it works is only around maybe 10 to 15% of all the tickets sold are sold with a voted nonprofit agency.
Gotcha.
And so in that we've covered most of our fixed costs through sponsorships, and if only 10 to 15% of the tickets voted are voted tickets, What that means is for each ticket that is sold, they might get double, triple that amount of the ticket price back as a revenue share for them. So it's really important for them to do good job marketing and getting their name out there. But if they fail to market, they're not going to get any of the money. So in round math, 2,000 tickets, let's say that to make it easy, 200 are voted and 20 of those 200 is 10%. And that is from one agency. They get 10% of the event net revenue. It's as simple as that. So it's not popularity contest. It's so they do marketing and they can receive benefits, and it should be a win-win.
Excellent. So for people that do want to vote with their dollars and do want to get admission and learn a little bit more about the event, where can they go?
Yeah, our website, tlhbeerfest.com. We also have the URL beerfestival.com. And you can see a list of the participating nonprofits, and you can outreach to them and say, hey, I want to support you. Hopefully they're doing a good job of outreaching to you already and sharing that. I know a number of them are using our logo and putting it out on their own social media, telling you that code, so it's not a secret.
Excellent. And if you are a brewery that is listening and interested in presenting your beers at the Tallahassee Beer Festival, what can they do to connect?
Well, first, we want to make this something that they benefit from. So we're going to work with our hotel partner, Hotel Indigo, and we're going to put them up on Saturday night in a hotel if they came from out of town and don't want to have to drive home that night. And then we'll also be feeding the brewery reps. So as they come there and they set up for our event, they don't have to leave and get food. We'll give them something to eat. And then, of course, we're going to have a little bit of a happy hour for those guys in advance of the event so they can walk around and intermingle with each other, have a chance to meet the other distributors, the other brewers, the other home brewers, try some stuff before the day gets kicked off, kind of get everybody in the right state of mind. But any of our social media, the Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, has a contact me, message me option that comes straight to me. And also you could just email me, bengraybar@gmail.com as another way to outreach. So it's hard to not find us if you're trying. And we'll accept people up until about a week before the event because we're going to have that CAD design. The Civic Center is working to create a QR code that you can scan as you're entering the venue. And so you have a map. So you'll know where to go to find what breweries and what vendors are present. You can walk right up to them.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I definitely can't wait to see how much everybody enjoys this year's event.
Well, I'm really grateful to have the opportunity to talk with you about it and look forward to seeing you here.
Hey there, fellow Florida beer enthusiast. We now have an official Patreon. In case you are unfamiliar, Patreon is a great way for a community to support the creators of the content you love, like the Florida Beer Podcast. If you're enjoying the content we bring you on this show or any of the shows on the Florida Podcast Network, you can help ensure that content keeps coming through for a small monthly donation equal to the price of a couple cups of coffee a month. So for just a few lattes, you can make a real difference. And the first goal of FPN's Patreon program is to help me get a better mobile setup to use whenever I can start traveling to great breweries here in the state of Florida. So if today's episode brought you valuable insights and information, please help see that these episodes keep coming by becoming a patron. Head to patreon.com/Florida Podcast Network to support the show, and it comes with some pretty sweet benefits. Want access to bonus extras? Nostalgic for these old school radio shoutouts? Lover of good quality merchandise? Well, not only will your monthly contribution help me grow the show, but you'll get some cool stuff in return. So please head to patreon.com/Florida Podcast Network for further details to become a patron. That's Patreon, patreon.com/Florida Podcast Network. You can also find the link right there in the show notes or by visiting floridabeerpodcast.com. Thank you in advance for your continued support. It's going to be a great event. Definitely cannot wait to hear what everybody thinks about it. From there, we're going to have over and we're going to be talking about Stache Strong. This is a 501c3 that was created by Colin Gerner after the untimely diagnosis and death of his brother from brain cancer. They have been working with Oscar Blues for a Stache Strong beer for a couple of years now, but this year decided to do something a little bit different, and so they created a beer concept, shall we say, and sent it out to several breweries around the United States to participate in, several of which are in Florida. So we're going to speak to Colin himself about the history of the movement, about how the unfortunate untimeliness of brain cancer has touched him and his family, and all the exciting Stache Strong beer-related things that are coming.
So it seems like this has a very personal connection and very close connection with you in terms of creating this movement, shall we say. What was the impetus behind creating Stache Strong?
Yeah, so my brother was diagnosed with glioblastoma, which is a rare and aggressive brain cancer, weeks before his 29th birthday. And, we went into a world of unknowns and a diagnosis that we were told to expect only 10 to 15 months post-diagnosis, which is a tough thing to say, just about a year before you even turn 30. And in doing so, my brother went through brain surgery, radiation, chemo, you name it, all with a smile on his face and a tenacity in the way he fought things. And Stache Strong started as organically as anything you could imagine. He grew out his mustache to go into emergency brain surgery. My dad and I kind of followed suit, and all of a sudden people started taking notice of the three of us obviously having mustaches, and I coined my brother's fight as Stache Strong. And about 6 months later, we had started and fully incorporated a charity because my brother wanted to do more than what was already tough enough and just fight. He wanted to help others in this community, and that's exactly what we did when we started our 501c3 Stache Strong.
Interesting. That's kind of amazing. And since you have been doing this 501c3, what has the response been from, I guess, the community in whole? What kind of events have you done, and what kind of awareness have you been able to bring?
Yeah. And, it's one of those things where it started as two brothers and their family running this organization. And unfortunately, my brother passed about 20 months ago. But throughout the now 3 years and 2 months, we have raised over $1 million. We've done it all through grassroots activities. We have no employees, no office space. This isn't even my full-time job. This is my nighttime and early morning job, if you may. But in doing so, we've had 5Ks, where this year is our 4th annual, and we have over 1,000 people virtually run and participate across the country. We have major events in New York City and Chicago every year. And as we've gotten to the point where we've really become a beacon of hope and that voice in this community, what we've really done is provide hope and inspiration and an outlet for those families that are fighting brain cancer, and specifically glioblastoma, where when they are diagnosed and they Google, the term GBM, as we did, 3.5 years ago now, they see our family, they see our documentary, they come to a place where we don't focus on the 10 to 15 month life expectancy. We focus on what we can do to change that. And I think that's a very empowering thing that we've been able to do, and have families join alongside us. And at the end of the day, that's why we've raised the vital funds that we have for brain cancer research, because families and loved ones going through it find us as an avenue to support and, get behind, just as, going through the fight or even afterwards, unfortunately, right? So many people are taken from this cruel and dire disease that, we bring them together to do something about that, right? We're going to grieve, and it's going to be difficult, but if we can all come together and take that and kind of harness that energy and turn it into something positive, that's when Stache Strong gets to the point where we've funded these major clinical trials and research grants across the country.
That's amazing. And then obviously the reason why you're on our humble podcast is you started a Brew Stache Strong movement. And a couple of years ago, it was started by you and the people at Oscar Blues. So I guess I will start off by asking, was your brother a big beer guy?
Yeah. He loved, we love to enjoy a good craft beer. He was a big brown ale guy. As we were going through things, and we decided, one of our board members was a district tap room manager with Oscar Blues, let's brew a beer. a simple thing, one brewery. Obviously, they knew my brother, and we did so, and it went really well. And year 2 we scaled it. Year 3 we got bigger, and obviously that year 3 was when COVID hit, and they canceled all, or delayed was the better word, on all non-core beers. And that was a time that was difficult, right? We finally had our legs underneath us as an organization with several events, and I think we look at each other in the family and let's try to scale this, right? Let's try to move to 5, 10, 20, 30 breweries, whatever it gets to, and see what we can do. So a lot of, again, as I mentioned, we don't have employees. So a lot of what we do is truly grassroots. And we just started to email breweries that our followers and supporters said they loved. And we got this list that we just started to have calls and meetings with. And, fast forward to this past May was the Brew, Stache Strong kickoff across the country. And we had 205 breweries in 37 states that brewed a combined 300,000 pints, right? And that is so amazing for what we do, because that's going to raise well over $250,000. That, to put it in layman's terms, that's 5 separate year-long research grants in this brain cancer, right? So by having, Oscar Blues, but when they did it by themselves, it was important and vital, right? Every piece matters. But when you put 205 breweries together, they learn about my brother's story. They learn about so many that go through this. They've been emailing us and messaging us on social media nonstop this month at how strong the response has been from each of their individual communities, because this disease unfortunately touches far too many people with something that wasn't being done to change that. We have a national beer collaboration on our hands at this point that will occur every May. We have 12 breweries that joined in this year in Florida. And this is something that is only going to continue and grow as more and more breweries hear about it and learn of how strong the response was and how so many sold out so quickly, because ultimately it's a way for those individuals to give back to something that's taken a piece of them through this disease.
Yeah. And it's interesting that you mentioned that. There's a number of points that I wanted to touch on. First and foremost, that this is very similar to what CRM.
But it just goes to show, I think our story resonates with people, and it's something that they realize, especially when they've been personally impacted by this disease, which is more than you would even think of the 205.
Sierra Nevada did with resilience, and you've had a couple of other ones. Obviously, we've had on the show a couple of times, and other things such as Black Lives Matter and so on. Was it difficult to pitch
that something needs to be done, and that's when they come together for that cause?
Awesome. The other thing that makes it kind of different, like we were talking about, is if you take a beer, and let's take Curtain Up, for example. Gun Hill Brewery did a great job on creating sort of an easy to replicate another collaboration style beer event to breweries, or was it easy once you explained who you were and what you were trying to accomplish?
Yeah, that's a great question, because there have started to be more of these, and it's funny you mentioned resurgence. I remember being out in Colorado and thousands of breweries joined in. And I just thought, how cool is that all of these breweries are doing something they already do, right? They brew beer, they bring communities together, and they're doing it for one central mission. And that was kind of at the forefront when I thought of this whole thing. And I think Stache Strong is different, where I lost my brother from this disease, right? And we started this together. And this is something that I'm just simply passionate about. There's not a dollar going into my pocket. There's not a dollar going anywhere except for where it needs to go, which is research. And when you have these pitches where they see who we are and who our family is and why we're doing this, it's different than another corporate sponsorship or something along those lines. It becomes something that they feel passionate about, involved in, and they watch our documentary and they read our posts throughout May. We highlighted a different family across the globe who was facing or had lost someone to this disease. And it creates that community within itself, where that's what the brewery world is, right? I've been humbled watching these families and communities across the country come together and raise a pint for brain cancer research. And again, 205 breweries, I didn't think we'd get there this quickly.
New England style pale ale that breweries could kind of mess with a little bit. With Stache Strong, you didn't do that. You didn't have that recipe creation to send out to everybody. Why was that decision made?
Yeah, and that's what I think ultimately makes us unique in this endeavor. And listen, at the end of the day, what do? I try to inspire others and raise money for brain cancer research. What do breweries do? They brew beer. I don't want to handcuff them in their creative process and, what they're trying to fit within, the month of May or the upcoming production schedule. And so we kind of went more, I'll say, giving complete autonomy to the breweries, where we did coin, led them down a path of a smash for Stache, right? A beer name, single malt and single hop. You can go anywhere with that, obviously. Again, you have to use one malt and one hop. But as we got going, more breweries were like, hey, we already have a smash, or hey, this isn't really within what we want to do. That's fine. Ultimately, brewing a beer as a part of the Brew Stache Strong campaign for brain cancer research is what's mattered, right? And every weekend I've been driving around the country to these different breweries to thank them for being involved, right? The ones that I could get to and meet the teams that make this happen. And the response has really been like, they love that, because brewers got back to sometimes the roots, right? What's one of the first beers they ever brewed? A smash beer in their, living room as they were getting going. And I think letting them kind of run with the recipe and type, it doesn't matter to me, right? I don't own a hop company that we need to push a certain ingredient. I'm doing one thing, and that's raising money for brain cancer research. And they're brewing delicious beer and bringing the communities together. So once we realized, hey, let's just do this together, that's when it clicked and really took off.
That's kind of amazing. And I'm taking a look at the list of everybody that's kind of participating in the event. And you've got people as far north as Hiatus Brewing in Ocala, as far south as our friends, The Tank and Doral, Sailfish in Fort Pierce, Paradolia and Sebastian. And on the other side, Grand Central Brew House in St. Pete and Millennial in Fort Myers. With a lot of the breweries that are participating, are they showing you, or are they talking to you about the things that they're doing and events that they may have concerning and surrounding the releases of their particular iterations of Stache Strong?
Yep, absolutely. And that's the biggest thing, having a clear messaging, what we're doing, agreements along those lines, right? Because I have a pretty robust tracker at this point of these breweries across the country, but, I know what beer type they're making, what their barrel output is, the exact details of the brewery even. And that's where it becomes one of those things where having that involvement and direction in terms of, listen, this is what we're doing. May is National Brain Tumor Awareness Month. Obviously, as I've mentioned multiple times, we raise funds for brain cancer research. We have social media, a huge social media push all April and May long, where we had 2 interns from the University of Albany, where my brother and I attended, help us with creation and content and really just driving that message forward. But at the end of the day, breweries have a voice, right? They have a brand, and watching them kind of fit the Stache Strong beer into it was awesome to see. And, we had a majority of these breweries that were selling out in 2 to 3 weeks, right? Of a 5-10 barrel output. That's plenty of beer pushing, where they were coming back to us and say, hey, it was a top 3 beer for the month of May. We're already excited about next year. That gets to the point then it just, they put it on their production schedule. They're ready to go. They know what's coming, and it makes it really into something that's going to make a huge, huge difference in this world.
That's kind of amazing. And I guess, is there any signs of slowing down? Obviously, we're here in June and the cancer month is over, but it's going to be coming around next year. Are there any plans to hopefully make a bigger push then? Or is this something that you would prefer to see be a year-round event and release and continue to raise that awareness?
Yeah, I think ultimately having an annual campaign, right, where you kick off during May and you sell until that batch is gone, is where we're headed with this. We already have a list of breweries who have reached out to us. Hey, we couldn't get involved in time this year. Obviously, you had COVID implications, staffing changes, plenty going on, but already reaching out to us, hey, we're in next year, right? And this is going to become that annual campaign where, we had 205 breweries and quite frankly, year one of scaling. And there's a couple other 100 who have already emailed or, asked to be on the invite for next year. And as these breweries talk in their circles in their respective states of, the story and what we're about and what we're trying to achieve, I think you just have more and more come together for that cause. And then it's really impactful for the month of May, right? Which is, again, Brain Tumor Awareness Month. And you're starting that conversation that is, quite frankly, so difficult for so many that go through this. And we watched, again, families across the country that we don't even personally know at this point with how much we've grown, go out to the brewery, raise a pint for their loved one, raise a pint for someone who's still fighting this disease. And that's when you realize that you're doing even more than just raising funds for research. You're bringing families out that can be comfortable to be together and speak about this disease and raise awareness, because that's how we change this.
That's amazing. That's absolutely fantastic. You mentioned a documentary, you mentioned social media. Where can people find all of that?
Yes, our website is stachestrong.org. That's STACHE strong.org. And then at Stache Strong on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. We have a 3-part documentary, which is one of those things that, we got to film with my brother in the early stages of his fight and disease. And it's the greatest gift to, be able to see him on those videos. And the message in our family story is never clearer than it is there. And recently did a interview 2 weeks ago on ABC's The View with Meghan McCain, and that's had almost 500,000 views. That has really helped us as well. And, just go to our website, learn about this disease, learn about my family's story, and ultimately so many others who are unfortunately facing brain cancer. But that's why we started Stache Strong, to do something about it and make a difference.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I definitely can't wait to try my hand on a few iterations and go watch that documentary. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. We do appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
So that is everything. Next week, we are going to be back in Miami with some more awesome exclusive interviews. So make sure to follow us on the Florida Podcast Network at floridapodcastnetwork.com, at floridabeerpodcast.com, or our socials. This is Dave. Thank you so much, and we will see you next week. Bye.